that in this case, of all cases, that there literally wasn't someone. What happened here? There wasn't someone taking notes? There was no court reporter in the grand jury of the James Comey indictment? I mean, like, of all the cases in the country, you like basically would say to the court reporter, hey, drop every other case. Just make sure you're here for this one. How can that happen?
It's mind-blowing, Dan. And it is what Judge Curry said. No court reporter was present.
Let's check in with Adam Klasfeld, who's really now become one of the top legal reporters in the country. He is the editor-in-chief and founder of All Rise News. He's got a big following on Substack, on X, and beyond. And he is at the courthouse where this argument has been happening. Adam, good to see you again. So give us a sense, just big picture, how did this hearing go for Comey and Letitia James, do you think, from their perspective?
I think that they're walking out of this hearing, well, Comey actually attended in person, feeling a lot better. And I would say the judge has promised a ruling by Thanksgiving, and they may be looking forward to a Thanksgiving holiday. You can never tell with arguments like these, but the reception that the government got was a very tough one, especially toward the end. And usually with hearings like this, where the bottom line, the headline, folks are looking for, did the judge ask skeptical questions? And if so, on what side? And there's usually not a major revelation. Today, there was a pretty big revelation because before today's hearing, Judge Curry demanded to see the grand jury materials. And she let something slip during the colloquy. She disclosed for the first time that there is a pretty significant passage of grand jury materials missing from at 4:28 p.m. on through the signing of the indictment. We do not know what Lindsay Halligan said to that grand jury. And so it became a significant legal issue because Attorney General Pam Bondi said that she ratified the actions of Lindsay Halligan. She reviewed the grand jury materials, and she is standing by what Lindsay Halligan did in her role of allegedly as the interim United States attorney. The defense disputes that, said that she was invalidly appointed. But in order to salvage that, Pam Bondi said that she ratified it and retroactively appointed her as a special attorney. What the judge said to the government was that how could Pam Bondi possibly have ratified Halligan's actions when she couldn't have reviewed anything that happened between 4:28 p.m. through the signing of the indictment?
Right. And let's just remind people what the basics of the argument is here, right? I mean, the Trump administration has the power to appoint an interim U.S. attorney, right? And they are basically saying she is now the interim U.S. attorney. The problem relates to the clock, right? Explain to us why this 120 days is important and what the argument is from the Comey and James team about why her appointment was improper.
Absolutely. So the 120-day clock goes to interim U.S. attorneys. Now, before Halligan's predecessor, Eric Siebert, who, as you mentioned, was pressured out, forced to resign because he would not bring this case, he was an interim U.S. attorney. And the argument is, and it was an argument dating back to Sam Alito, saying you cannot have consecutive interim U.S. attorney appointments. Otherwise, you can sidestep the appointments clause of the U.S. Constitution. A president can say, why do I need to have the advice and consent of the Senate for someone entrusted to be the top law enforcement prosecutor of a federal district? Why do I need to bother with the Senate? You can just have the Attorney General indefinitely reappoint one's preferred loyalist every 120 days. And so that's what the fault lines of this are. It's, can a president evade the constitutional requirements from the appointments clause and the statutory requirements of the 120-day clock? simply by reappointing every 120 days.
But what they're saying, right, is, and again, I wasn't there for the argument, you were, but
yes,
they are effectively saying, even if that's true, that you can't appoint her, she's still been put in a position such that this indictment is still legal and proper, correct?
yes. So the government's position here is that, in the words of Henry Whitaker, who is arguing for the government, this is a paperwork error. So if you find that Lindsay Halligan was improperly appointed, that you can keep this indictment under a different prosecutor. The argument that James and Letitia James and James Comey are making is that Lindsay Halligan's actions, she was the only person in that grand jury room, that you can't call this a harmless error, that particularly in Comey's case, when they were fighting against the statute of limitations in his case would have expired within days had this indictment not been brought. So one of the real fault lines here, if the Judge Curry ultimately finds that Lindsay Halligan was improperly appointed, will she go the route that happened in other appointments clause cases with Alina Habba, with in the District of New Jersey, Bill Asaley in the Central District of California, and Sigil Chadha? Three other Trump appointees disqualified, the underlying indictments remained firm. In this case, what they're asking is, this one is so different from these because she was the only person in the room. The fault line is dismiss it entirely, Judge, and dismiss it with prejudice.
And again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like, based on the argument that you heard, that you now think it is likely that the judge will dismiss the charges based on that ground?
I thought that she was very receptive to that argument. And I think that she was very much taken aback by the fact that there was that gap in the grand jury records, that we do not know what Lindsay Halligan said for about 2 hours before a grand jury returned an indictment. It goes to a legal issue as to whether the person supervising her, Attorney General Pam Bondi, could possibly have ratified it as she said that she did. And it obviously goes to the deeper issue of what was said to the grand jury before, by a pretty razor-thin margin, they voted to true bill 2 of the 3 counts against Comey, and no true bill what was going to be count 1.
How is it possible that in this case, of all cases, that there literally wasn't someone? What happened here? There wasn't someone taking notes? There was no court reporter in the grand jury of the James Comey indictment? I mean, like, of all the cases in the country, you like basically would say to the court reporter, hey, drop every other case. Just make sure you're here for this one. How can that happen?
It's mind-blowing, Dan. And it is what Judge Curry said. No court reporter was present. And we're not talking about, a missing 15 minutes. We're talking 4:28. They were held by, according to press reports, well after 6 o'clock. We're talking about 2 hours, more than 2 hours here. And we do not know what happened in that grand jury room where this first-time prosecutor, this was the Comey case, was the first time that Lindsay Halligan walked into a grand jury room. And we do not know what happened in that final hours
Who's responsible for that? I mean, was this something they argued over? I mean, is it the prosecutor who is responsible for ensuring that the grand jury court reporter is there?
It didn't really come up during the arguments. I think what Judge Curry was most disturbed by was the ratification issue. Right. That the entire idea is, if Pam Bondi is saying, I ratify the actions of Lindsay Halligan, how could she have known? If she reviewed the grand jury material, there's a significant gap right at the end, just as she got that indictment by a razor-thin margin.
Final question for Adam Klasfeld from All Rise News. Tell us about this judge. I mean, you told us that you think the judge has been receptive to the arguments. from Comey, from Letitia James. What is this judge's background?
So she's from the U.S. District Court from the District of South Carolina. The reason for that is this is a disqualification motion. Lindsay Halligan, she is acting in the Eastern District of Virginia. She might have other cases there, so it's going outside the district. She's a senior status judge, I believe appointed by Bill Clinton, but she's been on the bench for a very long time. The fact that I think during the hearing she gave both sides a real opportunity to speak, very soft spoken throughout the proceedings. There was a real turn at one point where she said, "Let's cut to the chase. If you lose," she asked the government, Henry Whitaker, what if she latched right onto that ratification issue. If she finds that the appointments clause has been violated and the statute has been violated, what would make this right and not make it a dismissible case? So I would say that she gave both sides a very ample hearing of it. Unlike any of the federal judges who have considered these appointment clause challenges to date, she took that extra step of demanding the grand jury materials and bringing that into the legal argument on that issue. So she's a very careful judge. She's a judge who has been around, and she's a judge who's out of district to avoid that conflict of interest.
And Adam Klasfeld saying that she was receptive, very receptive to the arguments coming from the Comey and Letitia James camps. Adam Klasfeld, as always, thank you so much for coming on the show. His Substack is All Rise News. Watch out for this thing. Whatever Klasfeld does is going to end up being successful. So I would expect that this thing is going to explode in the relatively near future. Adam, good to see you.
Great to see you as always, Dan.